Welcome to Women in Paint. Whether your paint story is dripless or an old school mix of project management, business ownership, or modern estimation, the stories of women in paint are now part of the industry's rising success. We'll educate, encourage, and promote diversity and gender equality by giving you a behind-the-scenes look at our proven skills, business acumen, and driving force that propels anyone to find meaningful opportunities and a career path that challenges lives through paint. Now let's welcome your host, Michael Cheney.
Welcome to the show. I am back with our guy, Chris Moore from Elite Business Advisors. Chris, thanks for joining me for episode 2, where we are going to dive into the $500K to the $1 million mark. Look, it gets fun at this point. It gets maybe a little spicy, as Nick Slavic always says. But let's talk about some of the challenges, how you navigate that jump. And then, you know what? We're going to wrap this thing up by talking about the lifestyle you're trying to create within your business. The reason I want to mention that now is because as we're going through this conversation, a lot of your decisions, the strategic side of things, need to come back to this idea of what are you ultimately trying to do and why, right?
Yep.
So before we dive into that topic that you and I both love to talk about,
yes,
let's talk about some of the challenges with this jump from 5K to 1 million. And let's also just bring the awareness that 1 million, for some reason, is like this benchmark that sounds really attractive to people.
Yep.
And as we go through this conversation, I just want to be the voice of, you don't actually have to get there to have a really cool business. But if you want to get there, make sure you understand why you're trying to get there. So let's talk about selling and producing 1 million. Open it up for us. What does that look like? And what are the challenges?
Oh, man. Again, we could make this an hour-long episode just in that topic you just shared there. So I'll try to get through some of this so that we can save the time for that. But I think for me, one of the things we see is, and I know 500 to a million is a big range, right? But pushing, if you're going towards a million, right, that's part of your plan. Some people need to hit a million for it to provide the lifestyle, right? And I say lifestyle in terms of financial benefit from the business and also time freedom. Or lack thereof at certain stages. And so maybe that's what you need, right? And so I think the one challenge is, how do we have a sustainable business where we can make sure we can balance selling $1 million, producing $1 million, right? We talked in last week's episode, you asked the question, Michael, about W-2 versus subs, right? And for a lot of people, I see a really healthy balance of having a hybrid model, right? We've seen plenty of companies hit $1 million with all W-2s. We've seen plenty of companies hit $1 million with all subcontractors. There's no right or wrong answer. But something about having a hybrid with that, it allows you to really balance the selling and producing $1 million, right? Because again, if we're going off industry averages, if you're in-house, all W-2 model, you typically need 9 painters, which for most people is going to be 3 crews of 3. Crews of 3 seem to be the best. Maybe you have a lot of large jobs and you have a crew of 4, a crew of 3, and a crew of 2, right? There's ways you can balance. But a lot of times it's overseeing 3 crews. And this is where pushing $1 million can be tough to oversee 3 job sites. You got to have 3 good crew leads, which we'll talk about. Or even you have a lot of subs running, right? Like either way, it's still a challenge to make sure you're doing enough estimates to sell $1 million, but then figuring out how to manage the production, whether it's you doing both sides of it, or at this point, you might be looking to hire somebody to help with that.
Yeah, I think it's also important to just bring to the conversation that when you start bringing people on, whether it's employees or subs, like you're actually now in a leadership position.
Yep.
I think that gets overlooked sometimes, but like you then have to have people that show up and do what you want them to do and enjoy it. Really, right?
Yep.
And so that is a challenge. I mean, if leadership isn't your forte, the awareness to bring is that you've got to start developing some leadership skills. So I'll bring that to the conversation. So selling and producing 1 million, is is this the time to bring on an estimator or a production manager? I know you can do the model where maybe you're doing both, but how that was always challenging for me. It's like, I'm overwhelmed. I feel like I don't have the capacity for anymore, but do I bring on an estimator?
Yeah.
Do I bring on a PM? How do you make the decision?
Yep. No, that's great. And I love our point of view in this is like, again, we have plenty of clients all over North America. So we get to kind of benchmark. Like this is what I love going to speak at Sherwin-Williams events and at PCA, because we get to benchmark all these different companies and kind of share like what we've seen work, where the breaking points are and stuff. Right. And this is one of them. And I think to go back to your question, Michael, about the business, right? You hit a decision point, and most people do, when you're between $600,000 and $700,000 in revenue. And maybe for, again, in-house painters, you're somewhere in the 5 to 6 range. Because then it goes into, okay, we need to hire a third crew potentially. We might need office help. Like you kind of have to make a decision of like, we're committing to grow beyond to $1 million and beyond, or I can run everything myself still at 600 to 700,000 a lot of times with the right systems and structure in place. Right. And so when you're pushing over that 700,000 mark, typically, and I'll share this, a lot of people don't make a whole lot more money between 700,000 and $1 million, because at that point you're typically hiring an office person, even if it's part-time, 10, 20 hours a week, or maybe pushing full-time. And then you're also hiring your first leadership position, right? For some people, that's an estimator. For some people, that's a project manager. More times than not, again, in all the benchmark case studies we get to see, it's production manager first, owner still doing the sales. 80-20 probably. We've seen plenty of people that love the production being that person, and they hire the estimator. And again, there's no right or wrong answer there. It's what are you good at? What are your strengths and weaknesses? And what are you best to hire out, right? What do you not like doing, right? And so for most times than not, you're going to be hiring a production manager. We've seen some people get to $1 million, 7 really efficient painters. They can manage it by themselves, but pushing beyond that, they just can't. They can't sell that much and make sure the production's at the quality they need to. Even with great systems and stuff, it breaks to that point.
What do you see with your clients and just in the industry when someone's at that point where they're like, okay, I'm 700,000. I need someone else. And they take their best painter and they put them, I'm speaking from experience.
No, that's okay. That's okay. I can tell.
But really and then I'll share what has happened to me. But what do you see? Is it a good idea? We sometimes think our best player in the field is going to be the best player somewhere else. What do you see?
So, I mean, we've seen it work out well, right? That is the natural tendency. And I think, unfortunately, more times than not, it doesn't work out long-term. It might work out short-term for 6 months to a year. But there always sometimes is something that breaks there, right? And I think a big thing to think about, I love what you just said, and this goes from promoting from painter to crew leader too. You need people that can lead and organize and communicate in a crew leader role, and then obviously at a production manager role. So if you have a really good crew leader and they have the skill set, they can become a good production manager, right? Just because you have a really good painter doesn't mean they can be a good crew leader, or doesn't mean they can be a really good production manager, right? Because it's all about leadership, people buying into them, following them, right? They kind of have to have that law of attraction, if you will, as John Maxwell talks about. They don't have to even be your best painter. They just have to be your best leader, organizer, ability to break down a job plan on how we're going to attack this job, and communicate with the homeowner, communicate with you in the office and all that stuff, right? That's what you need, that skill set, not, hey, they're the best person that can roll out a wall in 20 minutes.
Yeah, I think that's a good reminder to try and view it as skill sets. Truly, your best painter, what is their best skill set? Is it they're super fast painting walls and very detail oriented? Or are they the best on the team at giving updates to you and the homeowner, right? So you're right to try and identify what that skill set is. Let's move into SOPs and duplicating, say, the same quality over and over, the same processes. And by the way, we talked about SOPs at the 0 to 500K mark. I have a feeling that we might be talking about it all along every step of the way. But shed some light on what SOPs are we talking about when we're trying to get to $1 million?
So, I mean, again, at this point, you're going to have multiple crews running again, even if it's on the sub model. I try to keep these conversations open to people that do run on an all sub model too. So you're going to need to make sure you have work orders for every job you do, right? Some sort of system work order that details out these colors in these rooms. This is what we're doing. There's a drywall patch that needs done behind this doorknob in bedroom 2. Like, you need a work order to detail out all that, because you do not have time to field 15 calls a day from every one of your crews asking dumb questions that could just be on a piece of paper or in a system that they're checking on their phone, right? So that's kind of an SOP that I think gets lost, is having just a work order in general. We talked on last week's episode about having the SOPs for the technical side of the jobs, and you need those. But now you're getting into the SOPs because you're, again, potentially also hiring people of, what is your phone call intake SOP look like, right? As somebody calls you to schedule a quote, what are the questions you ask? What's the flow and how you do that? How are you scheduling them? How are you strategically coordinating this, right? You need SOPs for how you start a job. Hey, we get there, we put a lawn sign in the yard, the crew leader goes and talks to the homeowner, we review the scope of work, we go over the plan for the job site. While we're doing that, painter 1 and 2 are bringing all the stuff in from the truck, and they're prepping out room that we're starting in, because this is all predetermined ahead of time, right? We need the closeout SOP. I shared a little bit about how we handled that personally on last week's episode, talking about the advocate discount. These are all just shameless plugs, Michael, for people to go back and listen to that too. But I don't want to spend all the time going back through it again, but like, having a good closeout process for how you wrap up a job, right? You talked about cash flow. I love it. We see clients all the time that's like, oh yeah, this person hasn't paid, or we haven't invoiced them for 4 days. And I'm like, have a better process to wrap up the job, right? You should tell the homeowner the day before, hey, we're going to be finishing up tomorrow, probably 3 or 4 in the afternoon. Are you going to be home? Like, this starts a day or 2 ahead of time, right? And if not, okay, well, hey, let's figure out how to pivot and how we can get a walkthrough and all these different things, right? So at this point, you need SOPs for way more than just putting liquid on walls, as Maggie Kuiper says. And you need SOPs for how you're running your actual day-to-day operations in the office, how you're doing your job costing. Every single part of your business needs some sort of an SOP. And that's the only way you can duplicate it to make it happen.
Yeah. You know what? This kind of brings up a question. When should someone get like an estimating program, right? There's a handful of them out there. Does this start at 0? Or is it okay at 0 to just be making your own spreadsheet? Talk to me about that a little bit. What's the investment look like?
Yeah, I mean, I would say for most people, because again, there's overhead costs with it. A lot of the programs break down. A lot of the good quality ones that we'll see at PCA, they're in the same ballpark price wise per month, right? And a lot of times when you're pushing that $300,000 to $400,000 range, you start having more of a budget for that, right? Again, when you're by yourself, you're doing $100K. Spreadsheet works fine. Create something in Canva that visually looks nice and just type it into there, save it as a PDF and email it over, right? I don't use QuickBooks for anything outside of bookkeeping. I don't recommend any of our clients to do anything. It creates complexities on the back end with bookkeeping. I just let it be disconnected from everything and keep it for one purpose only. That's my philosophy, and Crystal's as well. But yeah, I think when you're pushing that 300,000 to 400,000, you need to start thinking about it. Maybe it's just something basic like Joist. Joist is a pretty great platform. It's like, it starts at $120 a year, I think. It's pretty basic, but it's great. Maybe even in that smaller range until you push 500,000. But if you're wanting to go to $1 million, you need something like Drip Jobs, like Paint Scout, like Jobber. Those are 3 of the more popular ones in the industry that can really start helping you organize all this stuff. And again, now it's systems that you have to grow your business. But I think to your point, Michael, the sooner, the better, because it's a lot easier to get 3 painters adapted to change than waiting until you have 8 to then go back and undo all the bad habits or change all the habits on how we clock in and how we clock out. So I think the sooner, the better. But obviously, it's kind of the financial component of it too. And a lot of people are scared of change.
Right. But you know what, to your point on some of the other things you brought up, if you've got to create a work order, whatever estimating system you're using is going to create that for you. So it's going to be less legwork. A big thing is the invoicing, right? You send the invoice. If the customer doesn't pay, well, you can send automatic reminders. So it takes a lot of that off your plate. And even though it might be daunting to think about the cost per month, you actually are probably going to improve your cash flow, improve your
Yep.
productivity just by making the, I'll say small investment, but I know early on any investment
Yep.
can feel like a big one.
Well, and I think as a business owner, I mean, your time is at minimum worth $50 an hour, like probably 75 to 100 if we're being truthful, whether you're a good painter or just that's what your time is worth. I mean, if you're at $150 a month as a ballpark in that category, what's 2 to 3 hours a month of your time? And I guarantee those programs with the work orders and everything you just shared, Michael, like it'll pay for itself. It's pushing through to change, right? Especially if you're a craftsperson turned business owner, technology is more scary. I understand that, right? But we have to just push through. A lot of these companies are great. They've got great onboarding teams. They'll walk you through it. They'll help you set it up. Start basic with it and then get into all the bells and whistles as time goes on. Like just do it. I see way too many people hesitate too long on that and they've wasted time and energy.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about financial forecasting. And one thing that I want to add to the conversation is that, if you're wanting to do $1 million, and I would argue that this needs to start in the 0 to 500, but you need to understand what that looks like in terms of how many jobs does that mean that you need, right?
Yep.
You got to start developing some goals. Like you got to know how many estimates you need to go on.
Yes.
Which is going to turn into how many jobs you close, so you're going to have a baseline for your close rate.
Yep.
What does that look like? How do you teach this? You've got to have some metrics that you're shooting for so that if you're not hitting them, right? And if you are hitting them, then you can celebrate. But, sometimes it's like, I want to get to $1 million, but it's like you don't really have the roadmap or the plan to get there. So how do you teach it? How do you set this up?
This is one of my favorite things. So I think one of my favorite resources we've created for our clients internally is a planning sheet that if you want to do $1 million, we do this in December. This is why our business is very crazy from November to like just after PCA Expo, right? Because we're doing all the end of the year planning for next year, all that at this time. But we sit down, Michael, if you said, hey, I want to do $1 million next year, great, love it. Let's set monthly production goals, right? I look at all goals on production base because that's money earned. Sales are great. They just have to precede production, right? So we would sit down and set, hey, let's set monthly goals. Let's set, what's the goal for January, right? It might be 50,000. What's the goal for February, March, April, right? And then we know maybe by summertime, you're ramping up to 100 to kind of make up for some of the slower months early on. And we're going to set monthly goals and we're going to see, does it equal $1 million, right? I can't tell you how many times we do this. Somebody's like, hey, we want to do $1 million. And then they're like, man, I think the most we could do in April is this and then this. And it adds up to like 750,000, right? And I'm like, okay, cool. Now you got two options, shrink the goal, or we got to expand your limiting beliefs and how you're going to get to $1 million if that's what you really want to do. But in that sheet, we have 2 data points that break this down very simply for them. Average job size, closing rate. And we added actually this year set rate, like lead to estimate ratio as well, to where we can play with numbers then and say, okay, if you want to do $100,000 a month in July, we just have sales backdated to June. We need to sell 100 in June to produce 100 in July. And at your average job size and at your closing rate, this is how many estimates you need to do to sell $100,000, right? And I love it because for some people, it's the awareness side of it, but it also allows us to adjust those two numbers to see how that changes things, right? So we've had some people that have done that and they're like, man, I have to do 60 estimates a month to get to XYZ goal. And I'm like, yeah, okay, great. But what happens if we can up your average job size $500, right?
Yeah.
Or what if we can increase your closing rate 5%? Oh, now it's down to 50. Or maybe you do both and it goes down. Oh, now we only got to do 40, right? So now we know what levers we need to pull to make it more efficient to hit that goal, right? And so that's some of my favorite conversations to have, because then you can see why we need to invest in your sales process being better to close 5% more of your jobs, because it's less estimates you have to do, less time, and in turn, less advertising and marketing.
Exactly. And, when we talk about this, it seems like, you need to know all of that.
Yeah.
But most people don't know it. I was one of them for a long time.
I learned a lot of this stuff I teach the hard way, just so we're clear on this. Yeah.
Yeah. And you know what? I would even say, and I'm sure that you do this at some point with your clients, but as the owner, a lot of this comes back to, what does the owner want to make?
Yes.
If I say I want to make $350,000 a year, I have a great coach, who she
Yeah.
is, Sarah Riley,
Yep.
and her answer to me is always yes and how, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, the answer is I can make whatever I want. Yes
Yeah.
and how. And the how is exactly in what you're talking about with
Yep.
understanding the roadmap to $1 million
And
and
we talk
beyond.
about that, like work the numbers backwards, right?
Yes.
If you want to make 350K or you want to take home 10K a month or 20K a month or whatever that equals out to, okay, great. When you know your job costing margins, when you know what your overhead is, even as you're growing, we can work the numbers backwards. It just says, hey,
Yep.
if you want to do this, given all of this, you have to do 1 million, 2 million, whatever the numbers are. So I love
Yeah.
that philosophy.
And you know what? I like to say numbers like 350K or 500K for the owner, because the beauty about this business is that is actually possible.
Yeah.
Now, I did not always think that was possible. I had to do a
No.
lot of mind shifting and just basic belief in
Yep.
myself. But that is the beauty of this industry, is that I really believe that you have the capacity to write your own number down.
You do.
And then it's just about yes and how.
Yep.
Right.
I love that. I want to piggyback on one thing there that ties into a couple other things I know we wanted to discuss. For me, I think doing that exercise also helps you get past the point of the uncomfortable of what you have to do to get there. Right. There's something for me. I'm a numbers person. I get that. So I have a little different perspective than some people do. But when I can sit down and look at what is it going to actually take for me to make 350,000 a year, even if it's a daunting thing, you see the numbers and you're like, I can do this. I just have to get here. Right.
Yeah.
Or maybe it is getting past 1 million and having a production manager, right? We say like a fully automated business is a production manager, an estimator, and an office person, and you're going to be 1.2 to 1.5 million in revenue a year to kind of get to the point where you could go on vacation for a week and your business functions in all aspects without you, right? Maybe it's just sitting down and saying, hey, at 1.5 million, if we had these 3 roles, if our overhead was X, and this is like, what would I make? And you're like, whoa, that's enough to get me out of my comfort zone and go do 1.5 million and have some time freedom. If that's what you're trying to design your life to, that we'll talk about, like sometimes seeing those numbers on paper really helps push you past and out of your comfort zone.
Yeah. And the numbers, I mean, you know this, but you work these numbers backwards, then you know how many painters you need. So it eliminates the question of, man, how do I know when it's time to hire? It feels like I should, but I don't know. I'm scared. But it really, the numbers tell the truth, right? What's the saying? Numbers don't lie.
Yes. I love that you do that.
All right, let's talk about overhead purchases. This is the time that you start adding overhead, even though it's scary.
Yes.
You might have a office, shop space, vehicles. Talk about the overhead purchases that are realistic and smart at this time in the game.
Yes. So I think I have a couple initial thoughts on this. Number one, it goes in with the forecasting for leadership team, right? If you hire a project manager, you might have to purchase another vehicle, right? So thinking through that, and again, kind of establishing a budget, if you will, of, hey, what does this look like at this level, right? If we do 100,000 in July, we know 40% goes to labor, 10% for materials, and we have, our PM salary, our overhead of 12 grand a month. Does this work? Right. I think that's a foundational piece of it. Here's what I will say. There's creative ways to do a lot of things when it comes to offices, shop space, vehicles, right? It can be gas reimbursements. It can be purchasing a trailer that your PM pulls with their SUV or truck and you reimburse for gas or pay mileage. Like there's ways to do things. And I'm not always saying they're the best, right? I've changed my perspective a little bit on vehicles because of the branding. If you're going to have a vehicle, have it wrapped. It's free advertising. A lot of times the cost to go into it. Like we have some clients that sell about 30 grand a year off of one vehicle that's wrapped. Like that's a great return on investment. Maybe a little bit of an anomaly. Again, hard to track, right? Brand awareness versus people calling because they saw your car specifically, but like enough that I've shifted my mind on that a little bit, but it's still a cost. And here's the number one rule I tell all of our clients when they start asking about like this shop space vehicles, that I said, listen, not one of these single decisions will make or break your company. A $500, $600 vehicle payment should never make or break your company. But multiple of these decisions added up over time adds pressure onto what you have to do on the top line to make this financially work.
Yeah.
Right. So the $700 vehicle, okay, it is what it is. You add 3 more of those over the next couple of years and a $2,000 shop space. Now your overheads went up, what, 4 or 5K, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't include marketing for growth and all the other overhead that comes with that, insurance, car insurance on each vehicle. So I just say this, tread carefully with it. Not one decision is going to make or break you. Be smart with it. A big thing for me is how much cash do you have in the bank as a reserve? If you're in this 500 to $1 million range, like I would love to see people that have 75 to 100K in the bank. That's like after payables, receivables, like that's our cushion, right? And when you have a healthy cushion built up, sometimes it's okay to kind of let the growth stay out there and just build up some cash for a year, because it makes that growth phase a lot easier, right? I can justify a client maybe spending a little bit more on an office space than they should if their plans are to grow and they have a really healthy cushion to kind of have a buffer there, right? But that's the big thing.
Great. Yeah, that's great. Even just putting a number to it, have 75,000 in the bank. And listen, I think it's important to just say, I mean, when I grew up, my family didn't have 75,000 in the bank. They didn't have anything in the bank. Sometimes that sounds like a big number. But again, this is where the strategy comes into place. And that is absolutely possible. And, that's what business owners do, right? You think like a business owner, you create strategy around the things that we're talking about, and you certainly want to reserve in there. So we're nearing $1 million, or we want to get there. When do we bring on a marketing company? And, I think marketing, that's also a bad word sometimes, right? People are like, oh, marketing company. There's some great ones in the industry. There's some that, just quite honestly, you might want to stay clear of. And how do you know it's time? And how do you suggest finding one that is trustworthy?
Yeah. I mean, I think obviously feedback from others in the industry is huge. What's the experience been like? Unfortunately, what I just see as a blanket statement here is everybody just kind of thinks like marketing, spending thousands of dollars a month on marketing just makes problems go away. And it doesn't, right? There is no, it's not the end all be all solution to it. Like, well, I'm just going to go dump $5,000 a month at Facebook and Google and pay this company to deal with it. And we'll just have all these leads rolling in, right? Like, it doesn't always solve the problem. Sometimes it works for a season, and then you're still spending all the money and maybe not getting the results, right? And there's a variety of reasons behind it. And I agree with your statement on that, Michael. So I think just, again, be smart with it, right? Work smarter, not harder. Go back to the foundational things. We talked last week about, staying in touch with your previous clients. We talked about networking. We talked about some of the stuff in neighborhoods. I love what Nate Streeter from Olive shares. Nate's in charge of the marketing for all of their partners at Olive Holdings. So he's got a great kind of unbiased perspective of marketing, right? And he says they do a third, which is repeat, referral, organic networking. A third of their business comes from the digital online world, and the other third of the business comes from neighborhoods, which is the every door direct mails, postcards, door hangers, maybe door knocking for larger companies that have that budget. A third. And I love that, because you don't put all your eggs in one basket. You can allocate your budget for it. So, I do think, yes, we need to have a marketing plan. This is not the point to just keep throwing mud at the wall and see what sticks. We need to actually have a plan, but don't just dump thousands of dollars into something and hope that it's going to pay off, right? Do your due diligence. Yeah, you might go with a company even outside of the industry that does a website and it just doesn't go well, and you just learn and you move on and you try something different, right? But I do agree, you need to have a plan in place. Again, things that happen on every job, like we talked about last week with door hangers, just stick with the foundations. That'll get most people to $1 million. It's when you're pushing the 2 to 4 million that we really need to start adding a lot of the other stuff into it. I've seen a lot of companies get to $1 million, some quickly, some over time, that they can sustain it pretty well just through work smarter, not harder, easy organic channels.
Yeah. And you know what? I would say before you really start to spend any money with a marketing company on, Facebook leads or whatever it is, you have to be sure you've got a strong sales process, because the last thing you want is for all these leads to come in. And hopefully that's the case, right? Hopefully you hire a marketing company and they turn that faucet on and now you're getting all these leads. But if you get those leads and you've got a bad sales process and you can't close them, now you're literally like letting money fall down the drain. And that becomes a big problem. So sales process, I would say the sooner you can create that strong documented sales process, the better. What else? Well, you know what? Let's get into our favorite conversation, which is lifestyle. And I want to maybe talk about this from two perspectives. I think that there's a lifestyle of the business owner, the lifestyle that the business owner desires to have. And then I'm learning at the point that I'm at now that there's actually a lifestyle of my business that I want my business to have. If we have time, we'll talk about that second point. But what does it mean really actually to create your business based around the lifestyle that you want?
I'll keep this short. I want all of our clients to go down a journey and figure out what do you want your life to look like, right? Whether it's going through 6 or 8 categories, writing things out. I'm a huge fan of Darren Hardy. He's got a great living your best year ever journal. And it kind of goes through this exercise of like, hey, what do we want our life to look like this year? And it's like 8 different categories, right? What do we want it to look like? Okay, what's our top 10 goals? And kind of just thinking through that exercise of like, what do we want our life to look like, right? A lot of times we're reactive in that sense based on what our business is providing or the lack of time or money that it may provide. We're reactive to it. And so I think when you understand, like, our boys are young right now, but Christina and I both said, like, as they get into school and they start doing more activities and sports and stuff, like, we want to be there for all that. Like, I want to be able to leave the office at 3:00 and not think twice about it and not have to go home at 7 and catch up on work the rest of the night. Right. And so I think when you understand, like, what's the time freedom that you want to have in your business, or what's the amount of hours a week you ideally want to work, you may not be there yet. And then what's the amount of money you want to generate from your business to provide the lifestyle you want, right? I know you love to travel, Michael, right? But that also takes financial resources, right? So you need the time plus maybe the additional money to do the travel. You can start to then figure out, okay, how do I build my business around this to support it, right? We have some clients that have built it to 600, 700K. They got 4 to 6 painters. They're really efficient. They're really systemized. They're very profitable. It's low stress. They can work 25 hours a week. They're happy. They can travel. They can do stuff with their family. Like, that to them is like all they need. And some of them, as their kids have gotten older and graduated high school, they're like, all right, let's go build this thing now. Cause like, I don't have as much other stuff to do. And I have a different kind of passion and purpose that will shift over time. But figure out the time side of it, figure out the financial side of it, and then talk with somebody, a coach, a mentor, other people in the industry to be like, what do I need to do to allow me to do this? And maybe for some people, it is growing it to 4 to 5 million to where you can be a lot more hands off. And maybe for some people, it's getting to that 1.5 part I talked about earlier, where you can kind of have your business running and it's at least a good point to give some money to you and give you some freedom. And then you can decide from there where you want to go with it.
Yeah. My personal journey of being a business owner is that when it was time for me to take a few steps back and figure out what I actually wanted, that question was not an easy one for me to answer. It took time. It took, I'll say, some deep soul searching. It took a lot of journaling and a lot of, meditation and all the things that I do. But I think getting super, super clear on what you want your life to look like. I mean, this is what you're talking about. And I get real granular with it. When I think about this, and by the way, this can change at any point. What you wanted 2 years ago might not be what you want today.
100%.
But it's like, where do I want to live? What part of town? What type of house, condo, apartment? Do I want to live in a building downtown, right, with a doorman, or whatever the case may be? Do I want to travel? What kind of vehicle do I want to drive? What kind of clothes do I want to wear? How fit do I want to be? Right? I think you have the opportunity to build this picture. It's almost like building your perfect avatar that has the life that you desire. And when you can put context around that and start to believe that it's possible, then you get to create this business that can provide that for you. And that's what I just love about being a business owner, is that the possibility of architecting the life that you want is just amazing.
Yep. I couldn't agree more. And that's, to me, I always joke and say, a lot of entrepreneurs start their business for time freedom and financial freedom. And what do they not end up with? Time freedom and financial freedom, right? So we have to be intentional. We have to know what we're working towards. And again, there might be a season of just grinding through. That's kind of where we've been at. I see some light at the end of the tunnel coming later this year to kind of start buying some of that time back finally and having the team and the systems in place. That's okay, right? There's going to be those seasons, but I always knew that where we wanted to be at in a couple of years was like, that's the goal. So whatever we got to do in the meantime to get to there, you at least know the direction of where you're going and why you're doing what you're doing in the meantime.
Amazing. And I've had different coaches all along the way. Chris, you are a coach with Elite Business Advisors. You're also a business owner. How does someone get in contact you if they want information about your coaching services?
Yes, no, I appreciate it, Michael. Visit our website, www.elitebusinessadvisors.com. You're also always welcome to reach out to me personally, Chris at elitebusinessadvisors.com via email. Would love to have a conversation with you. We've got an amazing team of people beyond myself. That's been our journey the last couple of years. Everybody on our team has ran and or managed a painting company, which has been a huge blessing for us to recruit quality people that can have lived in your shoes day to day, right? And so would be happy to have a conversation, see who on our team would be the best fit to help you get where you want to go or help you discover where you want to go, and go from there.
And Chris, is anyone a fit? I mean, what if you are just starting out? Do you recommend a business coach or do you have to get to a certain level?
Nope. We have clients that are doing 100, 150,000 a year flying solo right now, all the way up to $5, $6, $7 million a year for goals this year in 25. So we've built out our skill set. We've got kind of different packages put in place to support people at those different stages. That's been a core of who we have been since the beginning of, how do we support the people that need us, regardless of what that looks like, right? And trying to find something to customize towards them.
Good deal. All right, Chris, we are 2 episodes in, keeping them right around 35 minutes.
Yes,
I think we
consistent.
are nailing it. This is a lot of fun.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you got it. I mean, this is great. Great content here. Join us next time as we keep progressing through those different benchmarks, and we will see y'all here next time.
Thank you for joining us on Women in Paint. We hope you feel compelled to follow your own path and use your compassion, strength, and skills to build a career in the paint industry. And if you like this episode as much as we did, give it a simple click to subscribe so we can invite you back to our next episode. And be sure to share it on all your socials. Remember, Women in Paint, stir up more than just a can of eggshell.